Alright, so my case came in, the Fractal Design Torrent Nano. This is obviously not a professional video by any stretch of the imagination. I just want to record the build process of me in this case. The major thing I want to see is if I can stick two 140s in the bottom and also have my video card in the bottom also. Theoretically that should be possible, but we'll have to wait and see. So also another thing to hope for is that this thing actually fits in where I actually have it set to go at. Theoretically it should. I did all the measurements, and if I'm correct I should be able to get it to fit where I currently have my current setup. So with that said, let me show you my current setup. This is currently how I have my setup. A custom open air setup so I can easily get to everything, because if anyone's been watching my videos in the past would know I was having computer issues with my video card, and I had to make this simple little setup here so I can easily get to stuff if something went wrong. Obviously that hasn't happened, so that's why I got the new case. And surprisingly enough, the width of this is the width of my new case, and I was able to move the monitor over and get used to the new placement prior to my case coming in. So with that said, time to shut this thing down and bring it out to the kitchen so I can actually start building inside it. But first I need to get my case out of the box and whatnot, so I'll be right back. Alright, so here is the accessories box and the case itself. I actually originally tried flipping it up like this to remove the box, but I found out that this right here is the back and this right here is the front. So I just opened up both top and bottom of the case and just laid it like this and just pushed it out. So now all I gotta do is, well, remove the packing foam and start building in the case. Now I got this off of Newegg. I would have liked to have gotten this off of Amazon, but Newegg was the only one that had it, and well, hopefully it came in completely fine. As you can tell, I went for the white model. Now the lighting will change throughout this video because right now the sun's about to set and whatnot, and I'm in my kitchen, so in probably like an hour or two we'll be going to kitchen lighting. It's going to look real atrocious, but like I said, this is not a professional video by any stretch of the imagination. But luckily this case seems to have came out perfectly fine from Newegg. Glorious peel. So now I gotta do is figure out how exactly I'm going to do the layout in this thing and come back. Well, I did say this was a non-professional video. Sorry about the noise in the background. My father decided to run the leaf blower when I want to record a video. So with that said, the one thing I really wanted to see is how well does the case fit in my actual setup. And surprisingly enough, it fits relatively fine. So hopefully the next time I come back, my father will not be using the stupid leaf blower and I can actually have a semi-professional video, or at least not look like a complete jackass. Alright, I was reading the instructions and I was trying to figure out if I can use the screws that I normally use for my motherboard, but looks like the screws they use are slightly different, and I was wondering where I actually need to get those, because as you saw I initially pulled out a big old box, but I remember that there's a nice little smaller box right here with all the proper screws in the hard drive tray, which I'm actually going to be using. I'm going to be using both the 3.5 and the 2.5 right down here. So I'm going to be double stacking, and then I'm going to be adding even more drives to the back right here on the little drive bay right here. So with that said, I'm going to start off with, of course, installing the motherboard. There is one more thing I want to mention. It is nice that they packed all the screws individually, but it'll be nice if they went the extra steps to at least label the packaging. That way so you know exactly what screw goes to what. Because I opened up this bag initially thinking it was for the motherboard screws, because it kind of looks like it is, but I actually had to open up this package right here with slightly different screws that actually properly mesh with the motherboard standoffs. So that's, as of right now, the only complaint I have about this case, other than the fact they can make it just a little less wider, as in shrink down the width by maybe this much. But other than the case screws not being properly labeled or being labeled in general, overall I really like this case. The real question is, can I stick my small form factor power supply in here, get all the cables properly routed, And then of course also stack my drives up here and still have everything properly melded in and whatnot, because I really do not want to mess with these IO panel cables and whatnot. So I'll come back in a little while, because again, this is not a professional video. I just want to kind of document the whole process of me building this thing to an extent and just generally show this case off, because surprisingly enough, there's not that many people really properly doing any like proper build log or anything like this, let alone anyone trying to stick fans in the bottom right here with a video card also. So with that said, I'll come back in a little bit. Well, luckily my cooler clears. I didn't measure the cooler when I initially bought the case because I was pretty certain the cooler fits, and it does. So the next thing I do is put my video card in here and then take one of my two 140s and see if I can get them to fit. Alright, I'm just going to wing it. I'm just going to attach the two 140s right out of the gate. So I got to remove the feet, so that's going to be a pain in the butt, but hopefully everything works. So I'll come back when I get the feet removed and the fans installed. Alright, so I tried to get it to work, but these fans are just too thick. I need to order some thinner 140s or thin 120s, that way so I can give some airflow to the GPU. Now again, this is only an RX 6600 XT, but I still like keeping my stuff really nice and cool. Now I'm torn, do I really want to keep this big ass fan that's non-RGB in the front to keep my processor cool? Or do I want to take these two 140s and use them in the front to give the front some RGB and whatnot? Now obviously another thing I could do is just order an RGB 180mm fan, but that's like 50 bucks. So I'm going to have to figure out if I really want to put these two fans in the front. Most likely not, because these fans at certain RPMs, they vibrate, so I may not just do that. But with that said, I'm going to continue building on and come back when necessary. Alright, so I'm in the process of figuring out where I'm going to be mounting the drives and if the cabling I got will work. Surprisingly enough, the power for the SATA does not fit. I mean, I can get it to work, but I'm putting a massive amount of strain on the cable, so I'm going to have to cut this off and extend it. The one part that sucks is that it's a twisted, so I have to make sure that I keep everything properly parallel, or else I risk shorting out my drives, which is obviously something I don't want to do. So it's going to be a real bitch lengthening this cable up by like an inch. But yeah, luckily when I go to snip this section and make these a lot more shorter and more proper to fit right over here, it's not twisted. I just gotta put one next to the other and whatnot. But this part, like I said, is twisted, so it's gonna be a pain in the butt. So yeah. So now I've got to break out the old soldering iron and start soldering left and right. So I'll come back when I get all the soldering crap figured out and whatnot. One thing that never ceases to surprise me is that every single time I work on one of these cases, either being homemade or an actual proper case, I'm always forced to either lengthen or shorten cables every single time. Now, in this particular instance, I actually need to, because the cables I currently have are not long enough. But yeah, it's going to be a massive pain in the butt. Luckily, the cable I'm using for my fan hub, which is this one right here and this one right here, is pretty much going to be simple, because all I need to do is match the lettering on this side right here to the lettering on this one, and then it's just literally just match the cables and everything's going to work. And luckily I don't have to worry too much about this fan hub, because it is a fan hub, but I'm more worried about my hard drives. Though this isn't the first time I had to do something like this, but it's not exactly fun to do anyways. Also, the noise you're hearing, if you can hear it, is my cat Liz, which is here. You make a lot of racket. In you go. And that's Mr. Peppercorn. He's one of our oldest outdoors. Though technically he is an indoor cat, but he's originally an outdoor. Well, like I said before, this is not a professional video by any stretch of the imagination, but the extension cable is finally done, and I'm fairly certain I wired everything up properly. I know for a fact the two SATA ports here are going to function without an issue. It's just these two I'm a little concerned about, but if I wire them up the way I think I did, it should still function. I do have some old 2.5 and 3.5 I'm willing to use to test because I still want to make sure I get full 5 volt and 12 volt out of these things. So I'll bring those drives in when I actually get to a point where I actually go for testing this thing. But for right now, next thing I gotta do is I gotta get this little guy soldered up together. Luckily, again, this one's gonna be real quick and easy compared to these ones. And again, this one right here is to control the, or not control, but give power to the fan hub here. And once I get the fan hub powered up, then I can most likely start buttoning up the rest of the case and whatnot and actually make it look like something. So I'll come back when I see it need to. Alright, so for the first round of testing, I want to make sure everything boots and both the front and back fan spin. And of course I didn't flip the power supply. Alright, got an image. Front and back fan are in fact spinning. I'll have to dial in the I'll have to dial it in when it comes to the fan curves and whatnot. But everything's working. I can probably bump this up to a little more higher. But this thing's pushing a lot of air even at the speed it's running at. Then again, I don't have the fan filter on and whatnot, but still. So everything seems to work. Computer turned on completely fine. The only thing I'm worried about is the PCI power, the supplemental power for my video card. It's very much taut. And also the USB 3 cable, the way I currently have it. It will work like this, but it looks ugly as hell. But hopefully the front USB ports work. I do not have a USB-C port on the motherboard, so this is going to be unfortunately not useful for me. But I'm going to make sure the front USBs work, and then once that's done, then I gotta go through the whole process of making sure the SATA cable I set up for the hard drives actually function properly. So I'll come back when I get all that figured out. Alright, surprisingly I did in fact wire up the SATA power completely fine. Both the 3.5 and the 2.5s fired up completely fine. For those that don't know, a 3.5 requires 12 volts to spin, and a 2.5 requires 5 volts to spin. And all the drives spun on all the ports, so I got full SATA power. So the next thing I gotta do is properly wire up these hard drives, that way so I can have SATA 1, SATA 2, 3, and 4, that way so they show up as main storage, secondary 500, then the other drives I put over here. I don't know what drives I'm gonna put here yet. I may actually keep these bare because the drives I got right now I just don't really trust. The 500 gig drive I have underneath this 2 terabyte I know is good, but the other drives I got I fairly uncertain, so I might just hold off and buy some proper like 2 terabytes full drives off of Amazon down the road for the back right here. So even still, that'll be the case. I'll still have more than enough storage on this thing because I already have a 2 terabyte boot drive. I have a 500 gig NVMe drive already installed, so I got 2.5 terabytes there. This gives me, 4.5 in the combination of the 500. I now have a grand total of about 5 terabytes worth of storage on my desktop, which is quite a lot. So I'll be able to load so much games and hentai on my computer. To be more precise, Fuda hentai. I would rather be building a computer than watching Biden be, well, incompetent and stupid. Alright, I got the hard drives wired up. I decided to leave this area open or free until I can get some more proper hard drives, especially considering like I said, the supplemental power from my video card is very, very taut. So I need to go and get a custom cable made from Custom Cable Mods. So that's going to cost like $25, but it's going to be very much worth it. I was going to use these little thin SATA cables because they look nice, but unfortunately they're just too short. So I need to order another set of these that are a lot more longer than this, maybe like by like an inch or so. I think these are like 6. So I believe the next step up is 10. So I will have to do a little bit of cable management, but these ones are so much thinner and less bulkier than this. And surprisingly enough, these things can be bent quite a bit and they still work. Unlike with these, I'm too afraid if I bend them too much, they'll just break. Hence why I really don't want to move these cables, because again, the USB 3 port cables are very, very delicate. I sent my dad a link to a little extension that's supposed to let me move the actual connector inside and make everything look nice and clean. Give me a second to actually show you what I'm talking about. This is the extension cable I'm talking about. I'm ordering a pack of 2, or at least I'm going to have my father order a pack of 2, because I have seen in the reviews that a few people have had 1s or 2 that are duds, so it's good to at least have a backup for if one ends up being a dud, which is possible. So obviously when this comes in, I will have to tear apart the computer again, but it's going to be very much worth it, because it will also clean everything up here, make it look nice and clean. So with that said, I'm going to finish up everything else. I'm going to figure out how I'm going to wire up the RGB and whatnot, because initially my idea was to use the 40mm fans right here, but as you saw at the beginning, they are too thick. So I got to figure out if I want to just snip off the RGB lead of this thing and make it work with that, or if I can actually find an RGB lead. That way, so I wanted to snip this one off, because these fans are still good, but I can't use them in my current case, unfortunately. So I'm just going to put these back in storage until I can find a better use for them. Kind of a shame too, these are $40. My father fortunately wasted them. But then again, I got these for my Lee Q58, so whatever. I'll just put these back in storage. Alright, I just basically stripped the cabling and just stuck pin to pin, and I made sure everything's working. The RGB strip on the little power supply shroud is working. So the next thing I gotta do is just more or less clean everything up and put the back panel on and whatnot. Alright, I booted up the computer again to make sure the drives show up properly, and they do. Exactly how I want it, the 2TB, then the 500. Now, most likely what I'm going to do is that if I get those 2TB drives like I was talking about, sorry about the autofocus. Good grief, that's some bad autofocus. Holy crap. I'm going to reset the video. Okay, hopefully it looks a little better. So like I was trying to say, if I get those 2TB drives I'm talking about, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 500 gig out and just slap in a 200 or 2TB that way. So it's 2TB, 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 then a 500. That's how I have it. That's how I plan on having it set up when it comes to storage on this thing. But then again, I have 5.5 gigs, not 5.5 gigs, 5.5 terabytes of storage on this thing already, so I'm doing pretty well. Now, of course, the 500 gig drive is pretty much full, but that's because I copied over what was on the 5TB onto here, that way so I can test this thing when I had it in its open air bench setup and whatnot. But obviously I can just go and nuke this drive and start all over again. So the next thing I gotta do is put the side panel on and close everything up and connect everything I need to, because I don't have my Ethernet, I don't have the Wi-Fi set up. So I'm going to do all that off camera and come back. Alright, so if I do anything right, it should be the peel. So I can figure out where the peel is actually at on this case. Yep, there it is. And just like that, I now have my computer set up in the Fractal Design Torrent Nano. Now, like I said, this is not a professional video by any stretch of the imagination. I let out quite a bit. Mainly because I was sitting for like 2 hours resoldering cables and making sure everything's properly aligned. That way so I don't short my crap out. But overall, this is a nice case. I just wish it wasn't as wide and maybe not as long, but again, it's a nice looking case. I'll just have to get used to the thickness and whatnot. But of course, the one major reason why I bought this thing in the first place is a big old fan right here. Now, I do plan on eventually buying myself an ARGB 180mm fan, but for right now I'll make do with the current fan. And also I still need to get some fans for down here, that way so I can actually keep my GPU cool and whatnot, and of course also buy a new supplemental power cable for the power supply, that way so I can actually route it properly, but that'll be down the road. For right now everything should work. I think the major first upgrade I'm going to be doing is obviously the little extension cable for the USB 3 cable here, because even though it's going to be more or less blocked by my monitor, I still don't like having it hanging out like that, and plus I want to get it out of the way, that way so it's in a more safer place. So once that comes in, I'll obviously have a little short video on that and whatnot, and I'll also do updates throughout whenever I get new components and whatnot, like the fans and whatnot, and just anything else that I want to talk about. So overall, this is a nice case. And here's what my setup looks like, fully complete. The monitor properly in place where I want it, keyboard more or less where it normally sits, and the mouse is more or less where it sits. And overall, again, I wish it wasn't as wide, but again, this case is going to have fantastic airflow, so it should keep my components cool, especially considering they're basically mid-tier. In this case, it's kind of meant for like high-tier components, so even still, it'll work completely fine, I believe. So I think that's pretty much it for this video.